Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about something a little different. I know that I have been meaning to put out my Scorpio video, and I've actually thought about it a lot. I have a lot of information that I'm going to say, but I thought first, if I was inspired about something else even more, that I would post a video about that. So today I was putting a lot of thought, which I always do, into the houses, and the things that I think are misinterpreted of the houses because of the kind of vague explanations, and the fact that a lot of people don't understand the 12th house, and also of the fact that the ascendant is so focused on that the 7th house isn't really focused on. But I will try to explain the houses in regards to personality and ego. Now, there's the difference between personality and ego. Well, first of all, I believe that the ego is just kind of something that we use in the physical life, in the third dimension, while we're alive, to identify with something, so we can kind of get on with our lives and feel proud and feel good about our stuff. But it is also kind of a basic way of living by the ego. And I also think the sun has a lot to do with the ego, because it kind of is like a feeling you have inside saying, whatever sign your sun is, this is what I would feel better attaining in my life. And it also definitely is affected by which house your sun is in, or what planets are aspecting your sun. And the moon has more to do with your physical body. This is definitely something that I'm going to stick with for the rest of me being an astrologer. The moon is very connected with your physical body and your habits and how you react to things. It is absolutely connected with your birth and death and the physical form. And it has to do with your past lives, so it's kind of like very dense energy. I know a lot of people aren't going to get, I'm sounding like a hippie or like some spiritual guru, but the moon is very dense, and it's something that we can fall into. It's something that it's our comfort zone, kind of like a net. I've explained this in one of my blogs. I put an entry in about the moon and Saturn. Saturn is our lessons, and it's our highest spiritual attainment. It's what the biggest, most powerful lesson we can learn in life. And the moon is where we fall back to. So if your moon and Saturn are aspecting each other, you can definitely see this. You would go back and forth between your moon and Saturn. If your sun or a planet is aspecting Saturn, you may find it a bit more difficult to let go. If your moon is aspecting Saturn, there's going to be not very much of a separation between your life goals and your lessons and your comfort zone, where you fall back into your net, and that's where your sun is. Your moon. So your moon is your comfort zone. But a lot of people want to know more information about the ego, and I just want to explain how the 1st house and the 12th house, maybe the 6th and the 7th, act out. I made a video explaining this before. It's definitely one of my favorite subjects. I love the 12th and the 7th house. I find the 12th house is actually really easy to grasp, so I kind of want to explain what I think the 12th house represents. I believe the 12th house is our subconscious. It is very, very, very present in our lives, and other people can see this, but we don't identify with it. And that's where ego comes in, because something we don't identify with is not going to be clear to us, but it is definitely our base. The 4th, 8th, and 12th house are the bases of our life. And the reason why they're scary is because people that aren't used to having been going into those deep areas of our lives, would find it uncomfortable because they probably live in the world of ego. Now, generally, the 12th, 4th, and 8th house aren't very ego-oriented, but they are so ingrained in our psyches and so ingrained in our soul that we just don't identify necessarily with them. They don't make us feel like an individual because they make us feel like more of a collective. So the 8th house kind of connects you on an intimate level with two people. The 4th house connects you with your ancestry and your lineage and your birth and death, and how your genes are, how like your family affected your personality in a very, very core. Like it's your subconscious. It's where you go when you meditate. And the 12th house is too, but the 12th house is more how you act and what motivates your actions. It's really, really, really in control of who you actually are, where you come from, your soul's evolvement, like how your soul's evolved. So the 12th house is your personality that you just don't identify with. Now, one thing that I think you guys might find interesting is that I definitely believe the 1st and 12th house balance each other out. And the reason why we have an ascendant is to balance out our 1st and 12th. So the 12th is how we act, and it's subconsciously who we are. And the 1st is our conscious and what we are actively acting towards. And it's automatically who we are, obviously. Like all of our 12th houses, we can't really affect where our houses are and what signs and what planets are there. But it's automatically how we act, and let me explain. Okay, I'm not really explaining this the best way that I could, but considering I felt passionate about it today, and I've been thinking about it, and the 12th house is the place where we show our true selves. And the reason why it's connected with secrets and hidden things is because it's hidden from ourselves, and it's something that we don't act on. So let's explain by saying like a Virgo rising will appear meticulous, well-learned, intelligent, and clean. And some of this comes from the 1st house, being a Virgo. But then if the 12th house is ruled by Leo, this person that has a Virgo rising is secretly, because that's how we like to describe the 12th house, secretly domineering. Now, Virgo rising will be like, I'm not domineering, but compared to most other people, their Leo will show more. But it's very subtle, and it's not something that they'll talk about or whatever, but you'll slowly see it in their actions. And that's how Virgo comes out, because Virgo is the sign after Leo. So Virgo balances out Leo's qualities. Virgo says, I'm humble. But Leo is like, give me attention. So Virgo risings actually need praise. They won't ever ask for praise. They'll say, no, I don't need that. I don't need it. And then they'll, like, part of them will be, like, upset, and they don't understand why. It's very subtle. So this is why a lot of people don't like the 12th house. There's a lot of issues there. But it's also why people with planets in the 12th house see things differently. They see behind the veil. It's like there's a kind of a veil of ego. Planets in the 12th house are past that veil, kind of. It's like kind of at the edge of the universe, like beyond ego, beyond what people are trying to be. But it's actually like, this is actually who we are. So a 12th house person with planets there might seem like an old soul, or may seem like they see beyond people, which is because they do. They see beyond the ego. They're living in a place that's beyond that. That's kind of behind that, because to them, they don't need that. As soon as they were born with those planets there, they were forced to not have an ego. Like, they have an ego, but they were forced to kind of, paying attention to their ego didn't help them. Because their sun, what they're trying to attain, if it's in the 12th, is truth. Like, I believe the 12th house is full of truth. Now, it's hidden truth, because if humans aren't ready for that kind of truth, the truth that's beyond ego, beyond who we want to be, and actually facing what is, which I believe 12th house people have to face the truth. And most people don't understand that, so then they're left alone, which is why the 12th house is all about loneliness. But the 1st house is what we identify with. So therefore, like the ascendant line especially. So therefore the descendant line on the edge of the 6th and the 7th house is what we project onto other people. And the 6th house, if the 12th house is who we are secretly, then the 6th house is kind of what we can work towards to becoming. So it's more of a balance, kind of. And the 7th house is what we project onto other people, because the 1st house is like, this is who I am. But the illusion is the fact that we are our 12 houses. But our perspective affects how we act. So our perspective makes us act like our 12th and 1st. And that ascendant line is in between. So if the descendant is the opposite of the 1st, then we would subconsciously look for that in other people. And it's not the same kind of subconsciously as the 12th house, but it's something that's like, if we don't know astrology, we don't know. So like these houses, the 12th and the 7th, are our shadow side. But the truth is, I believe that the 7th and 12th are more ingrained in who we are. And basically, it's the part of ourselves that we don't want to identify with because we don't see good in it. So it's kind of like humans, while we're in a physical form, we have to kind of decide, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So we tend to put things we don't like into the garbage, or give it to other people. The 7th is other people, and the garbage is our 12th house. And that is really unhealthy, because we are very much our 12th houses. And I can explain with more signs. Let's say Aries ascendant has Pisces in the 12th house. Pisces in the 12th house means in their subconscious, they do not focus on themselves. They have issues, they have lack of boundaries. But the Aries rising, you'll notice, acts like they don't. But then when you really get to know them, and people with 12th house planets can see beyond the veil. So they will see the secret of life of this Aries rising. This Aries rising may be an alcoholic, but then they don't think they are. It's because there's all these background things we do in our life that we don't identify with, because it's our foundation. So the 12th house is the foundation of reality. And it's very blurry because it's behind us. And then the 1st house is like, okay, this is who I am. And that's why we talk about the ascendant more, because it helps people get into astrology, because they're like, oh, yeah, wow. And then later we can kind of tell them, okay, this is the 12th house. And they're like, oh, okay. And it takes a while, but you start to see that the 12th house is who you are. It is like a deep part of who you are. But it's not easy to see. Especially if you're very egotistical or centered on the ego, you won't want to admit to yourself that the 12th house is who you are. Because you might say, and even other people might say, you don't act like that. But if you really get to know these people, their 12th houses are really strong. And if there's a lot of 12th house planets, it means there's a lack of boundaries, a lack of ego, no matter what sign is on the ascendant or in the 12th house. But let's go to another sign. So Aries risings may act and talk and look like an Aries rising, but then they're secretly Pisces-like, and it's their foundation. And their 4th house is also their foundation. It's how they acted as a child, alone in their room, or it's how they act when they're meditating. And that's the thing, because when you're alone, you don't have an ego, because you don't have an identity, because you are everything. The problem with the 12th house is that people don't understand what alone means, or what ego means, or what self means. When you're alone by yourself and there's no one around, you are the only person in the universe. I know it sounds like all mystical, but that's what the 12th house is. It's very spiritual and mystical, because the fact is other people are an illusion. How you see other people is just a reflection of yourself, always. And with the 12th house, I mean, you're forced to kind of learn this stuff. So with the 7th house, you are likely to marry and have enemies that have planets in the 7th house, or have something to do with the 7th house, which is why someone with opposite rising signs tend to kind of be attracted to each other, but then hate each other at the same time. And this actually is good for you. The 7th house is pretty selfish this way because it feeds your ego. The people think the 7th house is all selfless. No. It's like saying Libra is selfless. The thing is, Libra and the 7th house people feed off of other people. And it's their journey in this life to do that. It's not, there's no bad or good with it. It's just they need another person to reinforce who they are, and it's very ego. So the 1st house and 7th house are very ego. Now what I wanted to say about the 1st house is that the 1st house is actually not very selfish. It's just being yourself. It's noble. So with people with planets in the 1st house are noble because they are natural leaders, because they act as exactly how they want to be. It's self-centered, but it's not selfish. If the 12th house is selfish because it's such a deep part of who you are. And it's going back to the core. Now, I find people with North Node or any planet in the 12th house had past lives, or had childhoods that didn't let them focus on themselves. So as they get older, their whole life is learning to look inward. So the 12th house is very selfish because it is appreciating being alone with yourself, appreciating the universe, quieting your mind. Mercury in the 12th house isn't very happy because it's all about noise in the mind. Jupiter in the 12th house is very content because it means we have an imagination. We have boundlessness inside of ourselves. So Jupiter in the 12th house is a very spiritual placement because it is admitting and learning and delving deep and being artistic with yourself. I've seen this with quite a lot of people with Jupiter in the 12th house. And yeah, I mean, and then another thing with other houses like the 11th and 5th is that the 11th is feeding the 1st house because it's the 12th house is in between the 1st and 11th. So the 11th is actually good for your ego. All the air houses feed your ego because it is an extension of yourself. So the 3rd, 7th, and 11th house are all about your friends and how you communicate and what you want to communicate. If someone has a planet in your 3rd house, you like to communicate with them, and it feeds your ego because it makes you feel like your identity, it validates yourself. So if someone had a lot of planets in your 3rd house, you talking with them would feed your 3rd house. 7th house would feed your 1st house, and so on. So your 3rd house would feed your 9th house. Your 9th house is your ideals. It is what you believe everyone should be like. It's your morals. So your 3rd house, when you're communicating with someone in your 3rd house, your morals are validated because you're like, this is how I feel, this is how you feel. I'm validated. And then I guess what's left is the earthy houses, the 2nd, 10th, and 6th. That's just kind of a foundation to sustain your physical body. But your physical body being sustained and healthy helps your subconscious. And that is the 4th, 8th, and 12th houses, which are very actually selfish because they are the foundations of everything that you are. And without the 12th house, you wouldn't have the 1st house. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I left out, but this is definitely something I think about all the time. My Sun and Venus and North Node are in the 12th, so it's a focus in my life, and it was definitely something that was really vague. But I want to kind of dispel. I can see why people don't like people having planets in the 12th. Maybe if you feel bad for someone having a planet in the 12th house. But that's just an illusion in a way, because it just means that the people with planets in the 12th house are going to live another reality than you. They are going to have to focus on looking within themselves. And you know what? That's not a bad thing at all, because the ability to really look within and the ability to be happy by yourself is the most powerful thing you can do, because it's just basically reinforcing that the universe is boundless, that your soul is boundless, that you are the universe, that everyone is inside you, that you are everyone. Everyone's inside you. And the 6th house, being the opposite of that, is all about service. Everyone says that the 12th house is about service and the 6th house is about service. No. The 12th house is about remembering that you are a person, that it's not bad to make yourself feel better. And people that feel bad about 12th house planets, remember that laying in a bathtub, listening to calming music, lighting incense and a candle, letting your mind go and be at peace, this is a 12th house phenomenon. It is something that 12th house people do, and it's something that we all should do. It recharges our energy, it recharges our batteries, and the 12th house is about doing that. It's about remembering that you are a soul, not just a body, and remembering that you need to pamper yourself. That's what the 12th house is telling you. It's telling you that you don't need other people. The 1st house, the 1st and 7th do. They both feed off of other people's energy, one-on-one relationships. People with planets in the 1st and 7th houses tend to jump into relationships. They sometimes have long-term relationships, but that's ruled by the 8th house, long-term. It's about really getting to know someone on a soul level. But I find if you pity someone with the planets in the 12th house, you are probably an egocentric kind of person. You don't understand what the benefits are of the 12th house, which is, in a way, sad to people probably with planets in the 12th or 8th or 4th houses, because it is powerful. And the 12th house is a very powerful place because and you won't see it on the outside. It's a very secretive, selfish thing. Anyway, this is the end of the video, and I hope to post my Scorpio and Sagittarius videos very, very soon, probably within the next few days at the latest. Alright, thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something from this.